Hello and welcome to the Career Change Podcast. Today I'm speaking to Alex Østergaard, who is a confidence and inner freedom coach. So, hi, Alex. Thanks for being here today.
Hey, Christy. Thanks for
Yeah,
having me.
thank you for being. I'm so excited to speak to you because, like I said before, I think you are really very admirable. Like how you communicate to your clients on LinkedIn. It's really, you're so authentic and you're so yourself. I think a lot of us can really learn a lot from you, and you are all about personal development and confidence and mindset. And I'm super passionate about these subjects. Like, I don't think I would have been where I am today without working on my mindset and my confidence and going on that personal development journey. And I would highly recommend it to anyone on this planet. I think we all can use a little bit of personal development. It just makes your life so much easier. Yeah, and I think my clients also really resonate with this topic. So I'm really excited to dive in.
Me too.
So yeah, I'm just really curious where this passion of yours has come from your personal development and working on your mindset.
Yeah, so I think I've dipped in and out of it my whole life. I used to play a lot of sports, especially rugby. So, preparing yourself before a game and putting yourself in the right mindset. But I never really dove deep into it until maybe when I discovered audibles. And so for the first time, I could actually listen to self-help books because I believed that I couldn't really read them. But I think there's one moment where like it really became a passion. And I remember, and it was during a lockdown, I was doing two courses from Jim Quick. I'm not sure if you've heard of him, but he was doing a course on, one was on speed reading and the other one was on how to improve your memory. And I remember he shared this quote by Henry Ford, which is like, whether you think you can or you think you can't, either way, you're right. And that quote kind of blew my mind because I realized that I had been limiting myself like for my whole life because well, first of all, I believed I didn't have a good memory. I believed I couldn't I wasn't good at reading. I also believed that I couldn't be a leader, that I wasn't like that intelligent, that I could never start my own business. And just understanding this concept and it really hitting me for the first time, I realized like actually, no, anything is possible on it because if I start believing that it's possible, I'll make it possible. And so it kind of opened up this whole world of mindset and personal development. And that's when like I really fell into the rabbit hole and it became a real passion.
Funny that you say that you believe you have a bad memory because I also believe that. So good to know that you can change that belief.
For sure, for sure.
Yeah. And then how did you decide to become a coach and really really make this your career out of this, your business, and help people with their confidence and mindset?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, it was a bit after that, but just for a bit more context, I'll just go back a few years before. And so it was 2018 where, on the outside, everything in my life looked great. So I had just lost 20 kilos. I was in the best shape of my life. I was working for for a big tech company or Uber. Like I was on my way to getting promoted. I was eating super well. I had even started listening to her self-help books and meditating. And so, everything on the life was amazing. But then one day I went into work and I opened my emails and I think I had received quite a few emails and suddenly I was taken over by this massive rush of anxiety and stress. And it was like suddenly I couldn't really function. And I remember looking at my screen and it was just blurry and I couldn't take action. I couldn't do anything. And it was like, I had this deep fear of deep anxiety within me. And so I went to see the doctor and the doctor said, okay, yeah, you're definitely, you're on burnout. And so you need to take some time off. So I took some time off, but I don't think I really realized what was going on. I didn't really understand stress. I didn't really understand, what was happening in my body. I also judged myself a lot, thought I was weak. And what I did is that I blamed the environment. I blamed the corporate culture. I blamed that environment in general. And so I decided to quit my job at Uber, and I got offered a job as a freelancer working at eBay, and what that actually helped for a while, because it allowed me to detach myself from corporate politics. It allowed me to, work fewer hours, spend more time with my friends, spend more time doing things that I enjoyed. And after a year, everything on my life looked amazing. Like I was earning really good money. I was traveling loads. Like everything was perfect. But inside, I still felt empty. I felt like this is not it. This can't be it. There's more. There must be more to life than the dedicating yourself to a job that doesn't feel fulfilling, right? And so I think at that time I blamed the role I was in. So I was like, okay, it's the fault of the job. And so I said, I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to go find myself. So I went on this eat, pray, love year off, where I decided to go traveling in Asia to find myself, whatever that means. But the thing about traveling is that it's not as peaceful as you think, because you're constantly moving to the next place, constantly having to readapt, discover new things. And so you don't really have any time to settle, to think, to allow for things to arise, or for you to really spend time reflecting. And when COVID happened, so around 4 to 5 months into my travels, and I was forced to come back to Europe, it felt like I was starting right back where I left off. So it's like I had made zero progress. But then during COVID, I got into personal development, and like I said earlier, I discovered, oh my God, my mindset, and I'm limiting myself, and I got really into this. And I think 3 to 4 months into lockdown, I had this epiphany, like, I want to be a life coach, because it was like, it made sense. I want to be a life coach. But what I didn't realize was that hundreds of thousands of other people were having that same epiphany around the same time. And when it came to starting my business, well, a lot of the same things that led to me burning out when I was at Uber, the same feelings like came up. And within 3 months of starting my coaching business, I burnt out again. So I had this complete overwhelm of anxiety. I couldn't move for 2 weeks. I couldn't do anything. But luckily,
do you know why? Sorry, do you know what was it? Because you were overworking, or you were stressed about, maybe being successful, or what do you think?
Yeah, well, it was a mix of like a few things, but most of it was, this fear of not being good enough. It was all related to like external validation, what other people thought of me, and this terrifying fear of being found out, as, okay, I don't actually know what I'm doing. I'm not good enough. And essentially, like, I didn't notice at the time, but that's what happened at Uber, right? It was like the constant comparison, comparing myself to others, the fear of not being promoted, the fear, like, because I was chasing this external validation, this external success, and it kind of came back to haunt me when I started my coaching business. But then, because I was working with a coach, and because I was in the coaching environment, well, I actually was able to address the real issues this time, and kind of work on these things, and actually, make it through on the other side of my burnout, and discover the tools that I needed to be able to handle the stress, handle the fears, and so I guess now I'm on a mission to kind of help people do the same, in a way that helping people like let go of the self-doubt, find more clarity, so that they can actually start living a life that truly excites them, as opposed to living their life for other people, or for someone else, or for external validation.
Sure. And how do you make sure now that you don't end up in a, because I've honestly heard, I actually interviewed another lady the other day, and she had like multiple burnouts, like about 5 or something. Like, how are you going to make sure that you don't end up burnt out again?
Yeah, well, so now like, well, there's a few different ways of looking at it, but a lot of my relationship with anxiety and stress, and it even but if we think of anxiety, which is, for me, was the main cause of my burnout, is like deep anxiety. And what actually caused the anxiety, or what actually caused the burnout, was the fear of the anxiety. So it's the fear of the stress. It's the, like, not being able to handle it, not being able to be okay with it, or to know what to do with it. And so as a result, it just became so overwhelming, and that's kind of what created more of it and made it made it unbearable. Whereas right now, I've discovered many tools to just to deal with it and to, well, first of all, process it. One thing that I do when it comes to stress and anxiety is I welcome it. I'm like, oh, welcome to the body. And it's like, oh, I'm so excited. I'm so happy to have stress. And then suddenly it's like, I don't know, something happens inside where it's like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. And like, I'm comfortable with the sensations in my body. And so I'm not in that state of fear, like trying to avoid it, because, with any emotion, the more you avoid it, the stronger it becomes. And so, I'm fairly confident now that when stress comes up, when the signs come up, like I know exactly how to deal with it, and I'm very okay with it. And another way that I look at it is that I don't know if, because I mentioned, did you ever experience burnout yourself?
No, that I actually don't really know. What I know is that I got really, really stressed out, and I got shingles here, like on the side
Yeah,
of my yeah,
yeah,
stomach, and then basically I got fired from my job. So,
mm,
and that's when I really hit rock bottom, because I was like, thought I was
yeah,
useless. I had so much self doubt. I thought I'm never gonna find a job again, and it was such a terrible time. And then I went
yeah,
on that personal development journey in the meditation and yoga, and I started reading all the books and stuff.
yeah.
So
So
I
so
don't know if it was a burnout, but it was definitely like a lot of stress.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And well, the point is that there was a moment where you're like, you hit rock bottom. And so for me, yeah, like I hit rock bottom with my burnout. But when I look back at this moment, I realize this is the best thing that ever happened to me, because it was the trigger that led me on this journey, that led me on this personal journey. It made me, reflect it actually had to make me stop and like, okay, you can't keep going on like this. And so in hindsight, I look back and I'm like, wow, this was actually happening for me. And thanks to this burnout, I was actually able to grow even more and become a much like healthier, happier human being. And so like it makes me way less scared of any other event like that happening down the line, because I know that actually it will make me stronger. And every time I experience lows in my life, or especially in my business, or if I'm really down, or I've had loads of rejection, or I'm having a terrible month, well, I know now with pretty much like, well, not a lot of certainty, maybe not absolute certainty, but that on the other side of that, there's always like massive growth. There's always huge developments, huge improvements that come my way. And um, so now it's kind of like I welcome these moments, because it's like, oh, okay, I welcome the breakdowns, because with like breakdowns lead to breakthroughs a lot of the time. And so it means that it's way less scary, and so it's more manageable. And so as a result, I'm just a lot less scared of burning out. And I think because of that, I'm less likely to even burn out in the first place, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I think I have that with, well, I felt depressed for a couple of years, and it was really like so painful, that feeling like waking up and going to bed. And now then all of a sudden it just went away. So I never took any
Mm,
medication or anything. It just like I had it, and I had it for a couple of years, and then it was just, and I thought, okay, well, this is my new life. Well, I kind of knew, I'm sure it's gonna go away at some point. So I had this faith always that it's not gonna stay like
yeah.
that forever. But then once it went away, I was like, okay, so life can also be like this. But now, through that experience, I feel like I can handle a lot more emotion, because I had such terrible emotion. I felt so
Mm,
much that now, if I have a bit of a bad day or something happen, I can process it much easier, quicker, because I experienced
yeah.
something so intense.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's powerful.
Mm.
And but then you're using that into your advantage, right? And so you're, instead of being afraid of like going back all the way, you can compare how you were to how you are now. And it's like, it's all relative, right? So it's like, actually it's not that bad. And sometimes hitting rock
Mm.
bottom can be the best thing that happens to you, because it means that you know what that is, and you know that you survived, and you know that you made it out of it. So like, if nothing is as bad as that. Like for me, nothing is as bad as that state of anxiety, of stress. But I handled it, I dealt with it. And so I know that I can do that. And so anything that's less than that, it's like, okay, it's fine. I'll get through it.
And you know what I also think is, like, you also with your clients, that if they are depressed or they're going through something, then I can help them not just by theory, what I've learned from a book, but I can help from experience. Like, I know what you're feeling. Like, I know what you're going through. I know it's so horrible, but you will get through it. I also got through it. So you just have to,
Yeah.
keep going and don't give up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of it comes down to belief, and believing that you can do it, believing that you'll be okay, believing that you can make it through. And so having someone else who's been there and who can tell you, don't worry, like, there is light on the other side of the tunnel, you can do this, like, it's super powerful because it allows you to believe that it's possible.
Yeah. No, really true. And then, why do you think so many people, feel, so empty on the inside? I mean, so many people are coming out more and more about it. Meanwhile, on the outside, they have it all. They have a great job, they have a great life, they have a great husband, they have great kids, they have a beautiful house, they have everything.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can relate to that, having been there, had the big company names, Google, Uber. I was like earning really like good money, living the perfect lifestyle, but deep down I felt miserable. And I think what it comes down to is that, like, I mean, and I can speak to my own experience and obviously the experience of my clients, and there's many different factors of why that would be. But I think for me, one of the main ones is like living life for other people. So it's kind of following a path or following like a way of living that wasn't necessarily your own to start with, and that comes from kind of doing what's right, doing what you're meant to do, doing what you're supposed to do, right? And so we all of us grow up in a society where you're meant to follow a specific path. And we also, as children, we learn that if we want to feel loved, safe, and connected, we have to conform. So it's like, oh, you get good grades, your parents love you, your teachers love you, you get a good job, you get recognition from it. And so we're conditioned to kind of live a life where we're seeking external validation, where we're kind of conforming to the traditional path, because that's what allows us to feel safe and connected and loved by everyone, and accepted within the society. But it's not always aligned with what we actually truly want deep down. And I think when there's a misalignment between who you are or what you want, or your true desires, your true self, and the life that you're living, well, then that can create a lot of dissonance, and it can be like, oh, something's missing, right? And another thing is that a lot of successful people, part of the reason they are successful is because they are constantly looking at where they should be, instead of appreciating where they are. So because they're constantly chasing this feeling, like moving the goalpost of like, okay, once I achieve this, then I'll finally be happy. Once I achieve this, then I'll finally be happy, because they're attaching a lot of their self-esteem and their self-worth to things that are outside of them. And so the problem with doing that is that it will never ever feel enough, because you're constantly searching for the thing that's going to make you feel enough. And that's like chasing a horizon. You'll never reach it. And the problem with doing that is because you're always thinking about, where I should be. So you're like, what if, once I have the car, once I have the house, once I have this, then I'll finally be happy. Well, you're constantly projecting into the future. You're constantly living into the future, and you're missing out on the only moment that truly exists, which is right now, which is the present. And so you end up having everything that you want in life. One, you're miserable, and two, you didn't necessarily enjoy the journey on the way there, because you were so focused on what's next. And yeah, so like, but again, it makes sense, because it's how so many of us have been conditioned, or it's how we've learned to feel love, connected, and safe, has been by being high achievers, by chasing success, by getting that external validation. So it kind of makes sense that you would get that way. But I think that true fulfillment, it comes from giving yourself more of that validation, taking the time to celebrate where you are, what you've achieved, and try to spend more time in the present, and less time always like focusing on the next thing.
Yeah, I can really relate with this myself, because when I, got fired with my job and I thought, okay, well, this corporate life is just not what for me, then I was really like, okay, now I'm going to prove myself with my coaching business. Like, I'll show them, And then I was like, only I get my first client, then I can tell the whole world that I have a client. And then I remember getting the first client. I was so excited. And then, okay, then not my first client. Then I was like, no, but then I need more. And I can catch myself also, when is it enough, So I'm also very much aware of this. Like, okay, I really thought that if I'd have so many clients that I'd be really like happy. And now I'm already thinking, oh, about the next and the next. And that's not what I imagine it to be like. So I'm also really like, okay, calm down, let's just enjoy the moment. And I'm also I think it's also good sometimes to travel like that and be in Bali, like now, where we're now, just to be alone and to really reflect on how far I've come and what I've achieved, and to stand still with that, instead of, being busy. So I can see myself doing it, and then I like stop myself. Like,
Yeah, well,
you
it's
a few years ago, you wished you were here.
yeah, well, it's like I can't remember what the quote is, but it's like you've already achieved the goals that you said would make you happy, right? Like, and we've all done this, and I think it's like it's one of the features of being a high achiever. So being, someone who's striving to always be the best, to always grow. Like, one of the features is that we're constantly looking into the future, that we're never like fully satisfied with where we are now. And so one of the ways to counter that is to purposely create the habit of celebrating your wins, of taking the time to ask yourself, okay, look, what am I proud of, or what have I achieved in the last 10 years, and what have I achieved in the last 5, or the last year, the last week, the last 24 hours, and cultivating that habit of reminding yourself, okay, what are my wins from this week? What am I celebrating? And what that does is that it creates more enthusiasm, it creates more excitement and happiness in your life, which actually it means that you will be able to sustain your growth in the long term, because you're not going to be constantly depleted and feeling like, okay, now I have it all, but I'm exhausted, right? And so, like, I always like to ask this question, like, and I mean, it's hypothetical, but like, who do you think will have achieved the most by the time they hit 60? Is it someone who is always beating themselves up, always focusing on what they don't have, or is it someone who's constantly, reminding themselves that their worth, like celebrating their successes? And the answer is, like, at the age of 60, they'll probably achieve exactly the same. But then there's one of them will be completely exhausted, will be just waiting for retirement, will be like, I can't do this anymore. Whereas the other one will be like, I can't wait to keep going. Like, I'm just getting started. I'm excited, right? And so we need to optimize for the long term as well. And part of optimizing for the long term is taking the time to celebrate our successes and our wins, so that we can actually make this more sustainable for us in the future. And I mean, most people these days, like, we're probably not going to hit retirement age until 70, 75, right? So it's like you definitely want to focus on longevity, and what are some of the habits you can put in place now that will allow you to go further and faster as well in some cases.
Yeah, it's really changing your mindset, changing the way you look at things, and changing the way you speak to yourself, that can make you much more fulfilled in life.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
then, talking about fulfillment, why do you think it's so important to have a meaningful and fulfilling career? And I'm kind of asking that also because I've had clients who said that they had a very strong belief system that work shouldn't be fun, or it shouldn't be meaningful or fulfilling. But also because I see also on social media a lot of people who complain about their job, but they don't do anything about it, or that they're stuck for many years before they finally, knock on the door and be like, hey, I need help. Like, my job is not fulfilling me.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's different ways of looking at it. Well, like the first one, I think it's important to, or three ways. Like it's important to make the distinction between a job and a career, right? Because a job is just something that pays the bills. It's something that you show up to every day and you do. Whereas a career is something where you're investing in this in the long term, because you have to you have to get better. You have to work on getting promoted. And in a career, you're often you're focusing on becoming a leader, or there's office politics involved. Like it's a lot more than just a job. And I think so many people, they actually want a job, but they're in careers, and so they're miserable, because it's like in a career you're constantly moving forward and trying to grow and focusing on improvement and how you can better yourself. But in a job, it's just about showing up and just doing the work. And there are so many people who are in career style jobs, but or careers, who are in careers, but actually what they want is a job, and that can be a lot of the time what makes them miserable, right? But so that's one thing to consider. The second thing to consider is that it's also completely okay to have a job that isn't fulfilling or meaningful, as long as it's part of your global vision of what you want in your life. And maybe you just want to work like 40 hours a week so that you can then in the afternoon spend time with your family, or work on that hobby, or do the things that you love, right? And so that's also okay. But so it may be more important than having a fulfilling and meaningful career is actually having a fulfilling and meaningful vision for your future and where you want to go, and making sure that all of that is aligned. Okay, so that being said, like if you think about it, like one of the biggest regrets of the dying is, I wish I had the courage to live a life more true to myself. Yeah. And so if you think of like that we have a very limited time on this planet, where like we're all going to die, and sometimes we often try to avoid that reality, right? But the stakes are pretty high. The stakes are pretty high if you don't live a meaningful life, because then you're going to regret it later on in your life. And so I think it's important to remind ourselves of that, because yeah, if you don't focus on doing something meaningful, doing something fulfilling, well, you're just going to be filled with regret later on in life. So yeah, that's what I would say about that, I think.
Yeah, I think for me, it's like, unless, and I think there are really people out there who just don't really care about their job, and they just want to do it, and then get out and spend time with family and hobbies and stuff. And that's totally fine. But there are definitely some people out there who really feel like, they're really watching the clock, and they really feel drained, and they're living from weekend to weekend and from holiday to holiday. And I think for those people, they need to take action, So I think you yourself can feel the difference, whether you're like, what, I'm just doing this job, I don't really like it, it's not really meaningful, fulfilling, but I don't care, because I'm getting the money and I can do a lot of fun stuff. I love playing the guitar, I love skiing or doing all, and I can do all that stuff, great. But if you're really feeling miserable at your job and waiting in, like you said, we're going to die one day, so waiting around till it's 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock so you can leave, then you should start thinking, should I be here?
Yeah, it's true. And I mean, one thing I didn't mention as well is that there's a big cost. It can be a health cost. I mean, there's so many implications of being in a job and being miserable, is that you're going to be miserable outside your life. You're going to take it home with you. It's very hard if you're stressed and really stressed at work and not enjoying it. It's very hard to disconnect, and it's going to impact your relationships. It's going to impact your health. I mean, the biggest one is your health, right? And I think so many people, they work until they're 60, and then their health is so terrible because of how stressed they are, that then they don't even get to fully you the rest of their life, right? So yeah, it's a mix of all those things as well, right? And yeah, you only get one life, and you spend so much of your time at work. Like, why would you spend, like, I don't know what the percentage is, but it's, at least of your waking time, it must be at least 70% of your waking time, right? Is at work. And imagine Why would you choose to spend? Because it's you choosing, and a lot of people maybe don't realize that they have the choice, but
They
you
have the
always have a
power.
choice. Yeah, you always have a choice. And like I know some people of like friends of my parents who they are like 10 years away from retirement, but they're in a job that they absolutely hate, and I have conversations with them, and they're like, no, but I'm stuck, like I can't, like I don't have a choice, like because no one else is going to hire me, no one is, I don't have a choice. And it's like, maybe that's true, but if you believe that, then it's 100%
Definitely.
true. But yeah, exactly. But if you believe in another reality or another alternative, well, then actually that increases your chances of by I don't know how much, but it's way more likely for you to be able to find something. But and the choice comes from what you choose to believe, and when you choose, you get to choose to believe that there's another reality, so there's another alternative, so then you can choose to take the action. But yeah, I mean, you can't change people's beliefs just like that, and it also makes sense because it's terrifying. There's a lot of fear involved, and again, it's like if they're around that age, they've been conditioned for their whole life to think that this is the way to do it, and to be afraid of doing things differently, to be afraid of failure, to be afraid of people's judgment. And so yeah, like I also get that it's easier from the outside to say like, yeah, just you can just do it, but ultimately, and another thing I like to think about is that there are so many people out there who are in way worse situations than you are, who have turned it around and who have made it, right? And so it's like, yes, you can defend yourself by saying, oh, but you don't know what it's like because you have it easy, or yeah, you've like, you're not in the same situation as me. Okay, yeah, but the thing is that there are so many other people who have been in way worse situations than you that have turned it around. And so if they've done it, then why can't you do it? And yeah, so I don't know if we've got a bit off topic on what the original question was, but
No, I mean, no, but it's also like that Colonel Sanders from KFC at age 70 or something, in his 70s, he became super successful at KFC scene. And before that, he was just like a nobody kind of thing.
yeah,
And you also have that with writers, and there's so many like, you should actually just start reading those things as inspiration. Like so many cool stories about people who became successful much later in life or changed, did a big career switch. So yeah,
yeah.
it's all
Yeah, I love
possible.
that. You can actually Google, like I Google people who became successful later on in life, and there's like a massive list of people. I mean, even someone like Harrison Ford, for me, always
Yeah.
been a massive superstar. Only became famous, I think, when he was 40 or 50. I think 40. So yeah, there are so many people that have done it. So it's never too late. But it starts with the belief, because again, if you believe you can or you believe you can't, either way, you're right.
Yeah.
And so I often go back to that belief.
And then what do your clients struggle with the most, would you say, when they come
Yeah.
to you?
So it's a mix of different things, but it mainly is from like feeling stuck, I guess. And stuck mainly because of fear, whether it's fear of failure, very often fear of failure, and or fear of judgment, rejection, procrastination, and But a lot of the time, the problems that my client come to me with isn't necessarily the real problem, right? So, for example, if you take fear of failure, so they have a crippling fear of failure, which prevents them from doing anything. They don't know where to start. It's saying, can you hear me? It's just saying reconnecting. So I'll just, okay.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, no, sorry. I thought there was yeah. So they have a terrible fear of failure, so they don't know where to start. And so I asked them, okay, what happens if you do fail? So what would that mean about you? And in those moments, they often tell me, well, actually, it would mean that, I'm worthless, that I'm not good enough, that I'm a bad person. And so what that shows is that the real fear isn't failure. The real fear is of not being good enough. The real fear is of not being worthy. And if you think of like from an evolutionary perspective, where that fear comes from is, back in the hunter-gatherer days, if you weren't worthy, if you weren't enough, you would just be left over by the tribe and you'd die or be eaten by a saber-toothed tiger, right? So the fear of not being worthy or fear of not being enough is designed to keep you safe. But the thing is that so when you're afraid of failure, the reason why it feels so scary is because your mind and body is doing everything it can to avoid you putting yourself in a position where you could fail, because essentially it thinks you might die, right? So I mean, just understanding that can just be like an eye opener as to, okay, why does it feel like this? Why does this feel like this inside? And so one of the keys to actually moving past your fears and overcoming this is changing this belief that you have about yourself, that you're not worthy, that you're not good enough. Because well, two things. One is like realizing that there is no tribe these days. There is no saber-toothed tiger, right? So you're actually not at risk of dying. So the fear is technically irrational, right? And also, if you are afraid of not being worthy, if you're afraid of not being good enough, what that also shows is that there's a part of you deep down that might believe that that's actually true. Because if you truly didn't believe that you might not be good enough, that you might not be worthy, you wouldn't be afraid of failure. You wouldn't be afraid of fear. And so it's kind of like if you were afraid of having pink hair, and I told you, but you know with absolute certainty, and I was like, you have pink hair. And you're like, no, I don't have pink hair. Like, it wouldn't affect you, it wouldn't bother you, because you know with absolute certainty that it's true. But if you had maybe, you weren't sure of like, oh shit, did I? Then you would be worried, because because you believe, oh, maybe it's true. But if you know that it's not true, so essentially what the real issue is that people deep down have a belief that they are not good enough, that they are not worthy as they are. And part of my job as a coach is showing them or allowing them to change that belief about themselves, so that they actually realize that they are good enough. And that takes time, because it's a belief that you have been confirming through confirmation bias throughout your whole life. So every time there is proof, every time you got passed over for promotion, every time you got rejected by a partner, every time you failed at a presentation, or it's like, see, more proof that I'm not going to have proof. So you've collected so much evidence throughout your whole life that you're not good enough, so that it's going to take some time to kind of override that belief. But when you work towards overriding that belief and truly believing that you are good enough, that you are worthy, well, then that's what will actually reduce a lot of these fears of failure, fear of rejection, because you'll know that the consequence of you not being enough isn't true.
And do you have like an example, like of how you would make your clients feel more confident or more worthy, or
yeah? So it's like, the way I like to look at it is like, it's like turning a ship, right? So you have you're on this ship, and you've been going in the direction of, with this belief that I am not good enough. And if you want to turn a ship, you can't turn a ship in one go. It takes multiple attempts, and then there will be the wind or the tide will change, and you might go back to where you were before. But eventually, if you know where you're going, you're going to, if you want to go in the direction of I am enough, you're eventually going to turn the ship. And so that's the analogy that I use. And so, I mean, let's just take one of my clients. I won't name her. Let's call her
Mary.
Mary. Okay. So Mary, she had, terrified of failure and had this strong belief that she wasn't worthy. And so we, first of all, questioned this belief. So questioned the validity of this belief. So we went really deep into, is it true? Is it true? And like, obviously what she realized was that no, it's not true. And the only proof that she has is stories. So it would be like, yeah, my mum didn't come or told me off when I was this age, or I wasn't accepted into my university, and so she didn't have actual proof that it was true. So first of all, like helping her understand that this belief isn't true, and then I asked her to choose another belief that she could work towards that would allow her to, and it's not replace, it's more like override. So that's how you want to look at it. And so she picked the belief. I mean, she said that I am worthy and I am enough. And so then she, like, one of the things she started doing was to try to start rewiring her brain to believe this instead. So one was making it super visible. So she had it on post notes everywhere. She had it on a screensaver on her phone. And what I also did is we worked on an exercise where for 14 days she would send me a gratitude, things that she's grateful for, and she would sign it off with her new belief. And eventually what that does is that it makes her reminds her constantly to tell herself that she is good enough, right? And there's this other exercise that I encourage her to do, is to, whenever she's faced with a situation, is to imagine that you're looking at it from the I'm not enough glasses versus the I am enough glasses. And so then you kind of see, oh, if I truly felt enough, this is how I would approach this situation. This is how I would do this. And you just want to like practice, switching from one to the other, so that eventually you rewire the brain into believing that you are enough. And the thing, and with confirmation bias, well, then you start looking for proof everywhere. You start, oh yes, I am enough, and so over time you kind of override this belief. But that takes time, and I'm still overriding my belief, and I've been doing this for 4 years now, and so it's something that takes time, and because that belief has been conditioned and created over so long. But the thing with my client Mary is that whenever she faces situations, she can just remind herself, no, I am enough, and just changing the belief in her head, or the narrative in her head. It creates a completely different reality for her, and she can understand that the part of her that says that she's not good enough is just a voice in her head. It's not the real her, and so she can make a distinction. Okay, I have different voices in my head, but I get to choose which one I listen to.
Like the two wolves, like who do you feed? I also really
Yeah.
love the work of Byron Katie. It sounds very similar to
Yes, the work. Yeah.
your method. Yeah, the work. It's
Yeah.
absolutely amazing. Yeah. Okay. Last question. Pretty much, how any last piece of advice to any my clients are mostly women listening, who are feeling stuck in their life and their career. Any last piece you would like to say to them?
Yeah. So, I mean, one of my favorite quotes is from Ricky Gervais, who says, like, the best advice I ever received is that no one else knows what they're doing either, right? And so, like, I like to yeah, I like to remind myself of this a lot of the time. And so if you feel that you haven't got it figured out, if you feel that like you don't know what you're doing, or you feel like an imposter, or well, there's absolutely nothing wrong with you, and I will guarantee you that 99% of people, they feel that way to a certain extent, and just to it's like, I think one of the main lessons that I've learned over the last 4 years, and maybe you need to experience this in order to fully truly understand this, but if I had to start all over again, this is what I would drill inside my head, is that it really isn't about the outcome. It isn't about like what you will achieve, or the accolades that you're going to get, or the business that you're going to grow. It's really not about that. It's about the person that you become along the way. And when you can really understand that, it means that the most important is just showing up. The most important is taking action. The most important is trying. And so if you want to, maybe a way to make this relatable is that if you start posting on LinkedIn, it's not because you want to go viral. It's because of the writing skills and the learnings and that you will acquire as a result of writing every day, or writing and building that habit. Like that's the goal. It's not going viral. If in the same way of starting a business, it's not about building the successful business. It's about the person that you become along the way. And I think when you acknowledge that, it takes away a lot of the pressure, because the goal actually isn't to become successful. The goal is just to keep learning, to keep growing, to keep putting yourself outside your comfort zone, and just trusting that as long as you are taking action, as long as you're trying, well you're growing as a person.
Oh, that's really beautiful and so true. Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for this. I think a lot of people can really learn a lot from this and your wisdom. And I really want to thank you so much for being here today. And thanks everybody for watching.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. Thanks everyone for watching. Take care.
All right, till next time.